kicking off. This is the 48th week doing this. We're creeping up on 52 weeks, which means 1 year of doing this 5 days a week. Or almost 5 days a week.
Wow.
Most of the weeks. Yeah. But hope everyone had a fun Valentine's weekend. I finished watching Dark. I binge watched season 3 over the weekend. That was like my big plans.
And you did it.
Yeah. Did you watch any things?
What did I watch? I watched the Whitney Houston produced Cinderella, the Disney TV movie that was made from Rodgers and Hammerstein's musical. And then I found somebody had illegally taped production of the Broadway show when Carly Rae Jepsen was Cinderella, and Fran Drescher was the wicked stepmother. So I then watched that because I love that score. Like I said, it may be my favorite Rodgers and Hammerstein score. So I was really super happy to dig back into those, and of course I watched some Drag Race and the usual. Watched a bunch of murder stories, just to spice things up. What about you? So you finally caught up on Dark. That has been your stumbling block to other films that we've been like, you need to watch these things, and we keep saying, I need to finish Dark. I need to finish Dark before I can do this.
I know. I've been telling Samir that now I have opened myself up to extracurricular films, which are different from our assigned films. With this, but there are a lot of movies I want to watch before I find another series to get into. Although I do want to watch Bridgerton again, which is something Samir and I need to talk about because we might watch that together over watch party on Netflix.
Netflix party, whatever we're calling that.
And I did start watching last night. I watched 2 episodes of that Ghost Brothers show for those who have Discovery Plus. Or I guess it was on the Travel Channel, and it's fun. It's a fun. They definitely play up the right in the introduction. They say we see all these ghost shows, and we had one question, and one of the guys why is everyone white?
Yeah,
yes.
Walter has dropped a little nugget over here about with Paul Schrader. I'm like, he said he was talking about hardcore, and I'm like, do you mean the Linda Williams book hardcore or movie? But also the fact that you were talking about that movie, Looking for Mr. Goodbar, is extremely odd. I don't feel like I've heard anybody ever mention that movie, except for Vito Russo when he was talking about the representation of gay characters on screen, and that movie has a particularly problematic but very revealing about the culture inclusion of gay characters. Very interesting to hear that name thrown out there. It's like quite a cinematic weekend, musical weekend in murder.
Speaking of inclusion of gay characters, let's talk about Down with Love. Even though 2 of these actors ended up coming out after the fact, which is awesome. But Down with Love was our pick from Friday. And then we will be talking about Forrest Whitaker. But this was our Cult Classic Friday Valentine's pick. And this movie, I love watching this every single time.
It's such I think it just hits every note perfectly. Like, it's just tongue-in-cheek enough, but not so much that it's condescending to the material in a way, but they just, the understanding of these the movie about just shines through in every single joke, but also just stylistically, there's a million little touches that just add magic to the overall experience. And there's even like Tony Randall being in the movie is like obviously like the nod, one like specific direct nod because he was in so many of those types of movies. But there's even a moment in this movie where they sort of restage a joke from a movie that Tony Randall was in, and the movie that they're using that joke from is a movie that was itself also sort of mocking the genres and that it represented. So it's like the classic case of to be a good sort of what's not to not parody but satire. To be a good satire, it has to be a good example of that type of movie and know all the rules and know all the jokes and know all the things to make fun of, but it's part of like an appreciation of the genre. Was that movie? It had Jane Mansfield, and Tony Randall was like the lead of an advertising firm or something. But in the movie, he makes a deal with Jane Mansfield is playing a popular actress to get her to endorse a line of lipstick because she's known to have the oh so kissable lips. And so part of this ruse is that Tony Randall has to pretend to be in a relationship with her. And so then that makes him a star. So he gets this nickname in the press called Lover Doll. And then it's like when he becomes an international sensation, you see like headlines on newspapers in all these different countries. So you get like Japan and Russia and China, like all the, like, but with headlines about Lover Doll in, all these different languages. And then this depiction of Tony Randall looking, the Russian newspaper, he has like the balaclava and the big Russian facial hair thing, And so they do that joke here where it's like all the people who are reading Down with Love and the ways they're like smuggling it between them. It's like making fun of that, like, oh, we're showing how this thing's taken over the whole world by showing people in every country, doing this or reading this or watching this or whatever. Like, I just loved, like, that's how deep their knowledge of this genre went. So like when they use the pillow talk split screens, they are like doing this like raucous, like over top sexual joke throughout it. Like it's not meant to be like so smart that you'd have to know to get it. It's just like right there in your face. I've totally forgotten about that moment, or the fact that his astronaut character speaks in like a Southern accent when he's trying to seduce her, which is like what Rock Hudson, Zip Martin, that he gets from the dry cleaner. But that's what Rock Hudson does in one of those Doris Day movies, one where he's trying to seduce her and he's trying to act kind of gay, but he's talking in this like Southern drawl. So it's like this fake character he's putting on to seduce Doris Day. It's also this Southern, obviously, I don't think Ewan McGregor is making a joke about his own sexuality with that whole charade which was going on there. But they bring that joke into this movie. It turns out those characters, like you said, people have come out since this movie. So like the fact that love story of the two people who've come out since this movie are the ones she's like, I thought you were a homosexual.
Yeah. Yeah. So what if you're a homosexual? It's like, what?
Like he finds so many
this movie
cool ways to break those things in.
The costumes here, as Crystal says, the costumes, the sexual innuendos, the socks and the dick joke part right there, that is always one of my favorites. And this poor secretary's reaction of like 16 inches.
He's like, and I've got two.
Yeah, don't forget I have two of them. I could talk about this movie all day with like, I talked about on Friday about how stylized everything is, from like everything in this movie is just perfect. Like all of the costumes, all of their mannerisms and the way they speak. They all have their own distinct little style, and it's just, I love it.
It's still perfect. I love it's also, they capture the ridiculousness of everything like so well. Like when she shows her apartment, and I'm like, okay, a first time author coming to New York, you know, like from a small town, and they're gonna get a place to live in New York, and it's like, you know, nobody gets an apartment bigger than a shoebox when they first get there, but she's like, I hope this is okay, and it's this like huge, enormous, like
Bart's dream house.
Yeah. And all the crazy day glow, like even the choice of colors is a joke. Like it's both looks cool, you know, on screen, but also it's just like, you know, the fabrics and the style of furniture and the colors, you know, we're so over the top and our memory is so over the top. So they like just go even further, but just picking a bunch of crazy colors and throwing them in one frame. It's just like, you know, if I was going to go to New York and be an author, I guess I would accept that apartment.
I would settle for that, yeah, with the balcony.
And the perfect view of the fake moon.
Yeah, and then of course his apartment with, you know, like the dark blue and wood and all of his high-tech gadgets, and you know, that's the ongoing joke of, I love when David Hyde Pierce, he's trying to find the bar and he's just knocking on the door. She's like, how do you lose your built-in bar? It's like, I know it's here somewhere.
I love Crystal. I love the RJ, CJ, BJ, TB. You know, like all the initials.
Yeah, with TB. Oh, is it serious? No, they're just discussing or whatever. It's like, that's TB's Theodore Banner.
So many, like, just that kind of thing. Also, like, they were making fun of in that movie that they were quoting from with the multiple countries reading the books. Like, the name of the advertising firm is like Raskin, Pooley, Dooley, and Crockett or something like that. You know, it's like all these ridiculous names. You know, that itself is a joke of like every advertising firm has like 5 people's names. They all sound ridiculous, and like the way guys talk to each other, like everybody was Junior or JR or RJ, you know. Like every there's so many those kind of touches are just like it just made me smile consistently. Like every few seconds, there was some little delightful joke in some way, visually, or a take on an actor's face in response to something else. That's constantly keeping you engaged and delighted.
A lot of the sexism towards women, just, you know, being like, oh, like if you're up, like I'll take a coffee, and she's like, this is empty. And he's like, well, if you're making a fresh pot, I'll have one too. And then just going around taking coffee
Not me.
orders.
I'll have a Sanka.
He's like, not for me, thanks. I'll have a Sanka. Yeah.
Bitch.
It's so good. Well, if you didn't get a chance to see this movie, please watch it. It's so fun. If you still need a fun Valentine's fix, even though we still have some other romances finishing up the rest of the month. But this is available to rent. We've got some fun things as well, but always a delight, that film. But let's talk about today's Man Crush Monday, Mr. Forrest Whitaker. Only one of 4 Black actors to have won Best Actor at the Oscars, him being the last one, as far as just Best Actor go, I believe.
I think
it's just him, Denzel Washington, Sidney Poitier, and Jamie Foxx for Ray, and that's it. It's a small little group.
And all of those are after
Forrest Whitaker.
Like,
yeah. Yeah, just them. Just that little group of Oscar winners. Forrest Whitaker, I think the first things that I really remember seeing him in, probably Phone Booth was a standout one to me, just because that's one of my favorite Colin Farrell like thrillers. And then going all the way back to the 80s with Good Morning Vietnam, that's another one that really stands out. And I was just, I think seeing that and being like, oh, like this is the guy that was in Phone Booth, and here he is, like so much younger, but has had a
you see Phone Booth, yeah. And then you see Good Morning Vietnam, and you're like, oh, it's Forrest Whitaker, the guy from Phone Booth. Like, like I may not be the world's biggest Good Morning Vietnam fan.
Yeah, he was.
Yes, I noticed. Too. I'm sorry.
Yeah. but yeah, Forrest Whitaker has had a long career starting in the 80s. He was born July 15th, 1961 in Longview, Texas. His mother was a special education teacher, and father was a insurance salesman. He did football in high school. He went to college on a football scholarship, but had an injury and decided, well, I'm going to change my major to singing. And he actually is like a pretty like trained singer. Like I don't think a lot of us really knew that he could sing until we watched Jingle Jangle back in December. But he actually does sing. He was like trained as a tenor and like an opera singer for a while. He had interest in theater that started in college. Eventually, he got into the Thornton School of Music at USC, but then he was also accepted into their drama conservatory, and he graduated from UFC with a BFA in acting in 1982. He also studied at the drama studio in London for a little bit. Yeah, but pretty much starting right off the bat, he was working with some really good people in the 80s, being like Cameron Crowe in Fast Times at Ridgemont High. I honestly don't remember his character in that. It's been a while since I've seen it, though. Working on The Color of Money with Martin Scorsese. He was in Platoon with Oliver Stone. And then in 1988, of course, he was in Good Morning Vietnam. Another big thing he did in the 80s was he played Charlie Bird Parker in Clint Eastwood's Bird, which I haven't seen, but that is one that he immersed himself in that role, as he does with everything that he does. And he learned saxophone. I don't know if he learned to be as good as him, but yeah. But he won Best Actor at the Cannes Film Festival that year and got a Golden Globe nomination. He's been in things called, like, he was in The Crying Game. He was in Smoke. He's had a pretty good career.
He's obviously he was in Sorry to Bother You.
Yeah.
Black Panther.
Yeah, those being
recently, you know, so he's like every few years he manages to get himself in a movie that everybody watches.
Also, Battlefield Earth, which some have said is one of the worst films ever made. Which I haven't seen it, but he was nominated for a Razzie, and he regrets being involved in it. Yeah, starting in the 2000s, he was in things like Panic Room, The Last King of Scotland. Of course, he won an Oscar. I'll go more into specifically what he did for that role in a little bit. Since then, things like The Great Debaters, Black Nativity, The Last Stand, Rogue One, and then, of course, Black Panther. He wasn't Black Panther, right?
Yes.
Okay. He was also in Lee Daniels' The Butler, that being one of his biggest films to date. He's been on TV as well. He wasn't on Broadway until 2016. And he also is a producer and director, and has directed quite a few things going as far back as the early 90s, as far as him producing goes. And he's still doing that today. And then
one other role. You forgot to mention Ghost Dog, Way of the Samurai.
Right.
Where he plays a hitman, and he's with Drake. Okay, maybe Amy is not aware of this, but it was actually a really huge independent film hit, and it captured the attention of a whole new generation of young film fans. Because it was sort of it's a story of a hitman, basically. It's done in the Jim Jarmusch way. Jim Jarmusch always, like, he sort of appeals to the cool kid inside of everybody. Like, you want to be cool, you say you loved Coffee and Cigarettes or Ghost Dog, The Way of the Samurai. It was just like, he was one of those type filmmakers for a lot of young people. So when Forrest Whitaker was in one of his films, and he's in this it's a great movie, that really sort of like catapulted his star power with a younger generation that, like, people weren't even expecting that to happen. It just happened. And of course, we it wasn't really available, I think, for free anywhere when we were coming up with our plan. Now Criterion has added that movie for the month of February. You can, so if you are really, you know, after you watch today's movie and you just really want to get some more Forrest Whitaker in, that is, I think, one of his other great roles as well, up there with Bird and this movie that we're going to talk about. And now it's there for you to watch if you really want to see. It's a really great performance, and he's got a lot of very deserved good notices for that movie. That is one I do think is important in his career. Well.
I'll add that to my extracurricular film list.
It may be there.
He also does a lot of
this month.
Work. Yeah, I'll have to add that on there. He is a UN Goodwill Ambassador for Peace and Reconciliation. And he works with initiatives that empower youths and keep them from entering or remaining in cycles of violence. And they do that in Africa and the US and other countries. Yeah, and he's done, what else has he done? He co-founded the International Institute for Peace in New Jersey. And that's something else where they work, what do they work on? They develop programs and strategic partnerships to address issues such as increasing citizen security through community building, the role of women and spiritual and religious leaders in peace building, the impact of climate change, and the reduction of poverty. I guess he gets a lot of his humanitarian inspiration from his mother, just inspired by seeing her work with special education students and seeing like how much grace she had doing that role. So he seems like a really good guy. We like this guy. But let's talk about his Oscar-winning. Yeah, let's talk about his Oscar-winning film, Last King of Scotland. Now, for this, I had read that he gained 50 pounds. In recent years, he's gone through quite a dramatic weight loss. You could really see, like, I don't know if it was for a role or he's just trying to trim up a little bit. But he gained 50 pounds. He learned to play the accordion. He immersed himself in research. He read books about, I think it's Idi Amin. Idi Amin. Totally butchered that. He watched a lot of footage of him. He met a lot of Amin's friends, relatives. He learned Swahili for this role. I mean, he really just completely immersed himself in this, which he's kind of known for. And this movie, if you haven't seen this came out in 2006, directed by Kevin MacDonald, based on the events of the brutal Ugandan dictator Idi Amin's regime as seen by his personal physician during the 1970s. His personal physician being James McAvoy. We said back in December that we were going to throw in some more James McAvoy films. And we will. This movie was only nominated for Best Actor, and he won.
It was one of those, I think it was one of those moments where they're like, you had to earn your stripes, and so you got your attention when you did Bird, and you got your Cannes Award and everything. You know, it's like, okay, now how many years later did it take before he finally was given an Academy Award? Despite having a filmography, like, you know, all of his major films, you know, all the big films that he's been in were all pretty much widely revered, well-reviewed. But he never, you know, it's like whenever he did have like sort of like a starring role, the Academy just did not take notice. And it really wasn't until like all of this, they basically did the Oscar campaign right on this movie. Like, okay, he's going to like give us something amazing. So I think the studio producers, whoever it was, decided they really needed to put that work in on their end to make sure that the Oscar was really kind of sealed up with his name on it pretty early in the game. So, you know, there was a lot of press about all that work.
The man learned to play the accordion for this. If that's not like, commitment.
Exactly. So you throw out little stories like that about it's like, hey, look at all, you know, they basically built up amazing cycle of press for him all the way through the Academy Awards. So it was just like perfectly done to make sure that he was recognized for this performance. And I just think it showed a lot of, before anybody even seen the movie, we're already hearing this. It showed a lot of faith that everybody who made it had in this performance, and how good it was, and how well it was going to be received when the movie came out. So it was, but the movie lived up to like all of that hype. Like this was one of those, moments where it was not like you kind of went in, okay, I'll just vote for him because I think he deserves it more this, it wasn't like that. I think it was more like people really thought he deserved it because of the work.
I'm also looking at who he was up. I mean, he was fantastic in this, but I'm also looking at who he was up against that year. He was up against Peter O'Toole for Venus, which I haven't seen. Will Smith in The Pursuit of Happiness. Leo in Blood Diamond, which Lord knows I love Leo. That movie's interesting. And Ryan Gosling for Half Nelson. So I really think it was no contest.
Really, it really was no, like, they were like, I think they maybe even those other, because I feel like those other nominations were kind of like, okay, were you deliberately picking some weaker stuff so that like there was literally like no chance that it could be anybody but him when people were voting from the 5? It's like, of course I'm gonna pick this one. Like, is there any other choice when you're looking at that group? Not that Ryan Gosling and Half Nelson is bad, but it's like, dude, you're not playing like one of the worst monsters of history.
Yeah, they're all, good. I mean, even Leo's, I think, lesser roles are still good because it's Leo, but that's just me. Yeah, but he certainly deserved this, and frankly, just didn't have that much of a competition. Which, it had been any other year, maybe he would have lost to someone else, and we'd be outraged. Like, he should have won for this movie. I can't believe they gave it to someone else. Because no matter what year, I would think that Forrest Whitaker should win this movie, or win for this film. Forrest Whitaker,
yes,
he has 129 acting credits, including some things coming out. He will be, next you could see him in Respect, which is supposed to come out in August. That was supposed to come out this last year, and that got postponed due to COVID. I'm really excited for that one. And he has a lot of other things he's doing too. He's going to be in something called A Fall from Grace. He's cool, dude. He is a cool dude. Let me see. And he's directed 8 things, some of which have been short music videos. He's done some TV films. He's done some feature films. Doesn't look like he's directed anything since 2004. But he's producing things all the time. Has producing things up to this current year. So he's a cool dude. Cool.
Well, where can we watch this Today's Choice?
Well, it is available on HBO and HBO Max.
Fabulous.
He is certainly known for his kind of droopy eye. He says that is hereditary, and he has considered in the past getting it surgically fixed, not for cosmetic reasons, but because it kind of affects his vision a little bit. But the man's almost 60 years old. He stuck it out this long, and that's his signature look. Everyone knows this man. If anything, you can just like look at his eyes, and it's like, that's Forrest Whitaker. We know who Forrest Whitaker is.
I was gonna say, Walter pointed out, I'm like, Luke, you just noticed that?
Sorry, Crystal. Down with Love was not available anywhere that had to be rented. But yeah, this one is, if you have HBO, it's free. You're still technically paying for it, but no additional fee for that. If you still don't have HBO Max, I think they do have a free trial that you can do. And it is pricey. It is a pricey streaming service, but they really do have a lot of great movies on there.
And you can always find a friend with a password,
Like, can I just watch The King of Scotland, and then you could change your password. I just want to watch this. But this movie's great. It's been a while since I've seen this. I think it's been probably a good decade. So I'm really looking forward to revisiting this. Tomorrow we are talking about, yeah, I don't mind renting occasionally. Yeah, remember, if it's only available for rent, it's likely that we're renting it too. So
it
we're
just so
gonna do
happened
it.
that this movie we both owned on DVD because we've
Yes, down with
been
love again.
devoted fans since it first came out. But we do, sometimes there are also just movies that were like, okay, if it's available, we're gonna do it. If it's available to watch in any form digitally, and we love this movie so much that we're gonna put it out, we're gonna make that the choice. But we are trying to do more work to find things that are available on existing services, and luckily a lot of things are. But every now and then,
actually, I think it's been better this month than usual. Sometimes I feel like it's like, wow, I rented 3-4 movies this week. But I feel like
that's why
it's been
like
a little better.
in December, I was like, we have at least 3 movies that are going to be on Stars. Just do Stars for a month, and you're going to save on the rental costs for all these movies. So sometimes it helped, me to look at where everything was available, and if I didn't have a service but a bunch of movies were available on it, I'm like, okay, am I spending more to pay individually to rent these, or can I pay one smaller fee for a service that happens to have all of them? And I'll only pay for 1 month of it for now.
Yeah, it really depends on how often you watch things, how often you think you're going to use one particular service. HBO definitely just has some really awesome things on it and shows.
Yes.
And that's where and we have a few other movies that I know that are on HBO. Yeah, including next Monday's film is only on HBO right now. It's that's the one that is premiered.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, so if you don't have it, give it a try. Yeah. We know the feeling, Crystal. We definitely have a lot going on. And Samir and we recently did a thing where I decide, and this is actually the only two we do this with, otherwise we each pay for our own, but I recently got Discovery Plus. Samir has been telling me to get the Shudder app, which I hadn't gotten because I thought I would like it, but I don't know if I'm going to watch it enough to do that. Well, we decided we traded passwords for those. So I pay for Discovery Plus. He pays for Shudder, and that works out. So maybe
you can work out little arrangements like that with lots of your friends.
Get a friend. I'm not the type of person where I just give it to everyone.
Yeah.
Luke, here in California, at least in my area, our theaters are not open still. But I'm glad that your theaters are open. I'm dying to go back to a theater, but I'd like to go to the theater and not die.
Well, maybe after we get our vaccinations, we can be part of those 25% capacity movie theaters.
Yeah, but it is next week's film is also on I mean normally I would love to go see that movie in a theater, but
it's gonna the theater of my home is where it's going to happen now.
Yes. It's a good thing we've got a nice big TV. Yes.
Make your home theater as beautiful as possible.
Yeah. But please watch Last King of Scotland, again available on HBO Max. Tomorrow for our Director Tuesday, we are talking about the filmmaker Marlon Riggs, and he's had a very interesting career. He might be someone that I think the general movie watching public might not be super familiar with him. But he was a really, really interesting filmmaker. I learned about him at our film school, UC Berkeley. Yeah. So we're going to learn all about him tomorrow.
Yay. Excited.
Yay. Yeah. Last King of Scotland, available on HBO. Please consider donating to our Patreon if you have any money left from renting all the things. But it really does add up. We're halfway through February. Actually, we're just going into our week 3 of 4 for February, but we're already putting together a calendar for next month. And if you're interested in contributing to our calendar, then you have to be a screenwriter tier or higher. We've already reached out to our Patreons who do reach that level to get their picks. They've got some really good movies lined up. Yeah, it's going to be another good month. But please consider looking into that as well. Last King of Scotland, HBO. Tomorrow we'll discuss after the movie and then move on to filmmaker Marlon Riggs. See you guys tomorrow. Thank you for watching.